I don't like to make content on flat Earth stuff because those people are just being stupid and dishonest, like other creationists do too. But fortunately, the flat Earth people haven't become quite the political threat that other creationists have. I thought about getting pictures years ago in my travels, intending then to make a video like this one, but you've probably seen these same things yourself. Like, for example, when one day I was driving from Fluther to Reykjavik, and there's that mesa you have to go around at Selfoss. It's got one of those Icelandic names that's impossible for Americans to pronounce without practice. As you drive toward it, Highway 35 has long straightaways so that you can see the mountain in the distance, but you can only see the top part of it. It has a distinctive slope on the Selfoss side that is invisible because of the curvature of the land between you. And of course, the mountain rises above that as you get closer, illustrating the curvature of the Earth. And if you haven't been to Iceland, you might have seen the same thing. I remember seeing the same thing in Washington State as we drove toward Mount Rainier. So you get the same kind of effect if you come at it from the right direction, if the road has long straightaways where you can see this. I thought I had a photo of another example, but I can't find it now, of a towering thunderhead cloud on the other side of a lake. And we watched at sundown with the sun behind us as the lower part of the cloud went dark because of the shadow of the Earth, and we watched that shadow rise across that entire thunderhead. That can only happen for the globe, with the globe model. That's why flat earthers don't even have a model. They're not trying to explain anything or understand anything. They just want to make believe something silly so that they can pretend as if they know more than the smart people. Sundown creates some interesting effects. There is that celebrated moment when the clouds turn gold, and it lights up the land that way too, where everything is suddenly bathed in a golden hue for a last moment of brilliance before the darkness comes. I don't know if it's necessarily darkest before the dawn. It never seemed that way to me, but I do think it's more brilliant just before dusk. And that's from the perspective of standing on the ground. But on our way back to Texas from Washington State, I got to see that effect from a few miles up in the sky and well on the other side of the clouds. I didn't know what I was about to see, so I didn't get my camera out to catch that first and probably most brilliant part of that. Again, we're flying east, so the sun is behind us. At first, everything is lit up except for the parts of the ground that are in the shadow of the clouds above them. And the clouds were at two levels. There were lower clouds and some at mid-level. And suddenly I noticed that the clouds are no longer, the lower clouds were no longer lit, but the ground beneath them, strangely, was. There was a shift, a visible shift, where I could see that the luminance, the clouds above, just above the ground, were no longer luminous, and the ground below them was suddenly in a golden hue, quite lovely. And then I realized what I was about to see. So I got out my camera and or my phone rather, switch it to camera and get it into video and everything. But I'm sad to say that I just lost that. I just missed it. The ground was no longer bathed in that refracted golden light. Not all of it, anyway. Just the sides of the mountains now coming into view. Otherwise, the ground and the lower clouds were already on the edge of the shadow of the Earth. But the higher clouds, further to the east, were still lit up. And that, again, can only happen on a globe. Flat Earth cannot account for that. That's why they don't even try. And even though I missed what was arguably the prettiest part, I knew I had to get the next part, because now everything below the higher clouds is in the dark. And I knew that in just a moment, that higher clouds are going to be in the dark too, and I wanted to see that happen. As the Earth turns, and from our perspective, the sun appears to dip below the horizon, the shadow of the Earth rises to envelop everything. I didn't expect to see this last part, but I'm glad I got this too, as there was just a peak of one particularly high cloud still being lit up, and behind it, I could see the shadow of the Earth illustrated in the atmosphere itself. Again, disproves the flat Earth, because this can't happen on a flat Earth, not unless the sun drops below the edge. And the idiots who propose all this nonsense say that's not what happens. They say that the sun is really small and it's not very far away, but that it is always above the Earth somewhere. But even if the Earth was flat and the sun did dip below the edge, it still wouldn't look like this. The effects I just described can only happen on a globe. Not that this will make any difference to flat Earth believers, and I'll tell you why. Because they say that travel is broadening, but only if you have eyes to see, if you're perceptive, not willfully blind like flat earthers are. I tried to reason with a flat earther once, trying to explain these sorts of things and the perspective that you can get looking back down from the other side of the rainbow. But that guy told me that he had only ever been in a plane one time in his whole life, hard for me to imagine, and that he never looked out the window. Imagine being on an airplane for the first and possibly only time in your whole life, and you don't take that opportunity to even look out the window? I had to pity that guy, as he had what I consider to be a debilitating mental condition of having no curiosity at all. But it turned out to be worse than that, because I explained to him how we could use an airplane to disprove the flat Earth by flying all the way around Antarctica, which he says is not an island continent, but rather a ring around the entire Discworld. We would not be able to fly a plane all the way around that because we would run out of fuel before we even get a quarter of the way there. But it is conceptually possible that we could fly all the way around Antarctica on a jet and see and come back to the point that we came to. However, the guy I'm talking to, not very smart. And he somehow had the impression that I was some super rich guy, that I had my own jet, and that I was going to force him to get on a plane with me to fly around Antarctica and prove that the Earth was round. And that's when he told me that he would still believe even if he had proof that it was wrong. Because, as some well-known philosophers of the 19th century have already pointed out, that's what faith is all about. You are a terrible sleeping pillow.